Okay, I want to ask you something. What if there was a single equation that didn't just explain the spiral of a galaxy, but also the structure of your own thoughts? Well, today, we're diving into a really ambitious framework that does just that. It suggests that balance isn't just some vague feeling, but a universal, measurable constant that shapes, well, everything.
It's all built on ideas like this one. The geometry of empathy is the final equation. Now, that might sound like poetry, but it's actually a proposition. It's suggesting a deep mathematical link between how the cosmos is built and how our own consciousness works. It's a pretty bold claim, right? So let's see if we can unpack what it really means.
And really, this is the core question we're tackling. What if the exact same mathematical rules that forge a galaxy spiral are also the blueprints for a stable mind, a harmonious city, or even a compassionate society? The theory says this is no coincidence, it's a fundamental law of the universe.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the core equation itself. Then we'll see how it scales up to the cosmos and back down into the geometry of our minds. We'll even explore how it could design the cities of the future. And finally, we'll turn the whole question back to you.
Okay, let's get right to the heart of it. This theory claims that balance isn't just an ideal we strive for, it's a quantifiable constant. And to measure it, the framework proposes one single universal equation.
And here it is, the Atlas T equation. T, which stands for total balance, is the product of three key things. P for proportion, the Greek letter kappa for phase, and R for resonance. According to this theory, if you can understand these three components, you hold the key to harmony in pretty much any system you can think of.
Now, this is absolutely crucial. The theory completely redefines what we mean by balance. It's not about being static or perfectly still, no. Instead, it's this active rhythm, a constant dynamic adjustment that it calls reciprocity. So true harmony isn't found in things standing still, but in systems moving perfectly in tune with each other.
To make this a little less abstract, think about running a marathon. Proportion, or P, that's your ideal stride length, the optimal structure of your movement. Phase, or K, is your perfect pacing, the rhythm that keeps you from burning out too early. And resonance, R, that's your sustained energy, the stability that just keeps you going mile after mile. When all three of those align perfectly, you hit T, a state of balance, and, well, you finish the race.
So now that we have the equation, let's blow it up to a cosmic scale. Because the theory takes this exact same formula and applies it to the entire universe, connecting it to some really fundamental concepts in physics.
It all hinges on a concept called equal force symmetry. It says that for any system to be in balance, two fields have to be perfectly matched. You've got the reality field, which is the expressive force of everything we can see and measure, outward energy. And its opposite is what the theory calls the black matter field. Now, to be super clear, this is a conceptual term, not the dark matter of astrophysics. It represents a containing, stabilizing force, an inward boundary.
The ultimate state of balance, which it calls the T state, happens when that outward expressive force is perfectly matched by the inward containing force. This isn't a state of rest. It's a perfect, sustained tension between two opposing dynamics. Think of it like a perfectly tuned guitar string.
And this is where it gets really wild. The theory claims that this principle of balance is the actual source of universal mathematical constants. You know, things like the golden ratio that we see everywhere in nature? But it argues we also see it in things like the fine structure constant, which governs how atoms work. The big idea here is that these aren't just random numbers. They are the mathematical fingerprints of a perfectly balanced system. Okay, so let's bring this whole idea from the vastness of space right down into the most intimate system we know, our own minds. The theory suggests that these same universal geometric patterns are the very language of our consciousness.
So, to map our inner world, the theory gives us what it calls the four primitives. These four shapes are supposedly the basic building blocks of our thoughts and emotions. The triangle, that's focused intention. The circle is all about connection and empathy. The square represents stability and safety. And the spiral, that's our capacity for growth and learning.
And the goal of using this geometric language is actually very specific. If we look at it from a neuroscience perspective, it's all about reducing the noise between two major brain networks, the default mode network, which you can think of as your wandering, daydreaming mind, and the task-positive network, your focused, get-it-done mind. Achieving harmony between those two is what the theory would call a neurological T-state.
All right, let's get tangible. If this math really is universal, then we should be able to see it in the stuff we build. This part explores how these principles of balance show up in engineering and architecture.
Now, this might sound like the start of a bad joke, but it gets to one of the most fascinating claims in the whole theory. Seriously, what could radio waves and sunflowers possibly have in common? Well, the answer, it claims, is a shared mathematical blueprint for the most efficient flow of energy.
So here's the connection. Radio engineers use a tool called a Smith chart. Its whole job is to find the perfect balance of proportion and phase to shove maximum power through a wire with minimum waste. You could say it's basically a calculator for the Atlas Ester equation, but for radio waves. And here's the kicker. The theory's stunning claim is that nature uses the exact same geometry to organize the seeds in a sunflower for stable, efficient growth.
And this same logic gets applied to ancient architecture. The pyramid, with its powerful upward thrust, embodies proportion. The ziggurat, with its rhythmic repeating steps, embodies phase. And the dome, famous for its ability to contain and shape sound, embodies resonance. Each one is like a physical monument to a variable in the balance equation.
This all leads to a blueprint for what it calls living ratio cities. The vision is to design our spaces using the same harmonic ratios we see in nature, building with the landscape, not just paving over it. And it's all governed by one simple, powerful rule of reciprocity. For every single square foot of built surface, an equal living surface has to exist.
So after trekking through the cosmos, the mind, and our cities, the theory brings us right back to where we started, with ourselves. It asks us to start looking for these same patterns of balance in our own lives.
And here's maybe the most poetic idea of all. It refers to the human heart as the 13th node in a kind of planetary grid. It suggests our heart's electromagnetic field gives off a wave patterned on the golden ratio, acting as a personal tuning fork, allowing each of us to synchronize our own individual rhythm with the rhythm of the Earth itself.
Which leaves us with one final thing to think about. If balance isn't a destination, but a rhythm, a specific pattern of movement that sustains you, what does that pattern look like for you? What geometric shape? A clear triangle, a connected circle, a stable square, or a growing spiral defines the most resonant, most balanced rhythm in your own life. That pattern might just be worth looking for.